Welcome into the Chris Collinsworth podcast, and we're going to have some fun today because it is awards time around PFF, and this is sort of what we live for, the ability to take every single player, evaluate them, compare them, rank them to other players in the National Football League. I'm going to do my own version of this show as soon as whatever life slows down a little bit. I'll get through these next two playoff games. But our guys at PFF have already done it. And last night, you got a chance to see Trevor Sikkema and our PFF team pass out the awards, and it was a fantastic show. I highly recommend, if you are a football fan at all, you go into the PFF YouTube channel and take a look at what this show was, because they really went position by position, took the top 5 ranks from PFF at every position, really broke down the whole thing. And if you want a much better understanding of the NFL and positions that you ordinarily would not get that sort of understanding of or know anything else about, this is the show for you for sure. So welcome in Trevor Sikkema, who is our hostess with the mostest with all these different shows that we're doing right now. Trevor, great job with that show last night. It had to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Chris. Appreciate you having me on the podcast. And it was a blast getting to sit with Sam and Steve and Austin and talk about all these players, and not just giving out awards for every position, but certain aspects of every position. That's what makes PFF so cool. That's why the award show, I felt like it was great. We were giving all sorts of shout outs to not just the best O-lineman, but the best pass blocker. We gave an award for the best run blocker, the best run defender, the best pass rusher. We broke down the different areas of the game of football that matter, even beyond just position labels. And we wanted to give guys their due. We wanted to give them their respect, their props, recognize them for the fantastic seasons that they had. So it was an awesome show. The energy was great. It's always great recognizing some great performances. So yeah, I encourage everybody, if you didn't get to watch it live, head over to PFF's YouTube and check it out whenever you can.
Yeah, absolutely. You should do that. You should hear it from their mouths, because these are the guys that literally are in it every single day. They are watching and studying all the teams, as opposed to what I do, which is see 2 teams per week. And I go a mile deep on 2 teams and I have no idea what else is going on. But it was great. And let's get right into it. My son, Jack, tells me if you're going to do a podcast ad, get right to the meat of it right away. So let's go right to the quarterbacks here. And because this is sort of hotly debated and probably is going to decide the MVP race as well. And our top 5, and I think the one at the bottom is kind of the fun one for me, that most people, he's kind of the dartboard for so many people. But number 5 is Kirk Cousins, who had a great year. He really did. Now he's got some great players on the outside. Justin Jefferson is just going to be a rock star with that group. Aaron Rodgers is number 4, and he is probably the leading candidate for the MVP. So we'll talk about that. Justin Herbert, number 3, who was unbelievable in that game with the Raiders we did the other night. I don't know how many 4th down conversions they had on their way to tying that thing up. Joe Burrow, Cincinnati's own Joe Burrow, is coming in at number 2 after knocking off the Kansas City Chiefs in his last game. And Tom Brady, the ageless wonder, is number 1 on the quarterback list as far as our all-pro team. Give me a little bit of this debate. It had to be pretty healthy.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. We're obviously going in ascending order in terms of PFF grades. So it's funny. You see Kirk Cousins there at number 5, and some people roll their eyes at it. And it's kind of funny because Eric Eager, who is in charge of our research and development at PFF, he basically said earlier this year, he's like, Kirk Cousins kind of broke our system almost. No one else has been able to do it, but Kirk's been able to do it this year. He's had such a high grade, but obviously some of the play on the field has kind of been, you wanted a little bit more risk taking involved there. And the guys who are ahead of them, those are the guys that you've seen take the risks and it really benefit them super well. Obviously, Aaron Rodgers is having a fantastic year. Him and Tom Brady, the debates that we had on the award show were great. We laid out exactly why we have one of those guys as our MVP, but we kind of laid out all of the things beyond common stats. We got into big time throws and turnover worthy plays for who was our MVP. Our passer of the year, so outside of MVP, was Tom Brady. So Tom Brady, understandably so, gets the nod here as the number one guy. But man, you mentioned it. Joe Burrow and Justin Herbert. I don't know how you even fell asleep the night after that Chargers Raiders game. That was one of the most wild games I've ever seen in my life. But those are two of the best young quarterbacks in the game right there. And them being 2 and 3 on this list, it means the league's in good hands with some good quarterback entertainment moving forward.
It was interesting because there's people who monitor social media, obviously now after I've stepped in it a few times. So they always have somebody who's monitoring the thing. So I set a new standard. So every time I do a game, it's always about 50-50. I'm so biased for the Raiders or I'm so biased for the Chargers, so that's just standard. That's the way it goes. But there was a third component part to this game. It was he's cheering for a tie because he hates the Steelers. So I managed to squeeze in 3 hates in one game. It was a new healthy standard for me going forward. But Tom Brady, despite the interceptions, comes off as, I'm assuming, PFF's MVP in this whole process. Talk to me about why that was over an Aaron Rodgers, who had the best record, who had, I think, 4 interceptions on the season, control of the ball, and did it really behind an offensive line that was sort of a mess all season, that they had people in and out. How did Brady get the nod?
Yeah, and Steve Palazzolo was a driving force during this conversation because he wrote a really good article about why Brady was his MVP. And you're right, we ended up giving the MVP award away to Tom Brady. And the thing that really stuck out isn't that we hate Aaron Rodgers, right? We're not getting the Chris Collinsworth treatment where we just hate your favorite team. What it really was, yeah, Rodgers has been very efficient. He's been exactly what the Packers need, and that's good. He's had success with that. But Brady has more volume passing the football. And yet all of those really important categories, the turnover worthy plays, the percentages there, the big time throws, obviously you have the yards as well. All of that is up as well. So not only is Tom Brady right there in the same category with Aaron Rodgers, he's done it by throwing the ball more. So he's had more opportunities to fail. And instead, he has just continued to rise to the occasion every single time. And so for the sheer volume that the Bucs offense leans on Tom Brady to have the ball in his hands with good reason, he has continued to deliver. And that's the big reason why he was separated as the top guy for us as our MVP, because he has been asked to do the most in the NFL and he has delivered the most. And that volume matters when it comes to the MVP talk.
Interesting. And Tom Brady and the Bucs were 9-1 to win the Super Bowl last year. Going into the playoffs, I understand this year, 9-1. So there you go. It's going to be interesting going forward. Now we're going to do a little bit of the thumbnail version of your show from last night. We want you to go watch the show because it was that good. We're so proud of it. Special thanks to Western and Southern for stepping up and being the sponsor of the program as well. At running back, this one gets pretty interesting as well. Number 5 is Aaron Jones. Number 4, James Conner going over to Arizona. Jonathan Taylor, number 3. A.J. Dillon, number 2. And Damian Harris, Mr. Angry Runs himself, is number 1 on this list. This is the one that I think probably is going to surprise some people, that Jonathan Taylor isn't the number 1 guy on this one.
Yeah, and it just kind of comes down to usage, right? I mean, we're living in an age now where there's such a heavy running back by rotation, right? There's all these guys who are in specialized situations. And, when you are a short yardage guy and you do your job well, when you play in kind of just those situations, of course your PFF grade is going to be really high, right? You are doing what you are supposed to do. That's what PFF is all about. Not just looking at the common stats and saying, okay, let's judge them off of yards and touchdowns and things like that. We look at every single play and say, how well did you do your job? And so for that, you're going to see some of these guys here. I know like Tony Pollard as well is decently high on this list, just outside of the top 5. Some of these rotational backs, so obviously we see A.J. Dillon there at number 2. They've got really high grades. But again, when you're picking a running back of the year, an all-pro running back, you're going to go with Jonathan Taylor because he has that volume. He's gotten so many carries. The Colts have leaned on him so much to be their team identity, and yet he still has a PFF grade that is comparable to those guys that are more in their niche, specialized situations, which they're kind of supposed to do really well at. So I think, yes, Jonathan Taylor being number 3 on our grades here for all-pro, it's just kind of I think a a showing of where we are in the running back landscape in the NFL. But if we're giving away this award, if we're going all pro running back and we're picking one, we're obviously picking Jonathan Taylor here.
Yeah, it could come all the way back to Derrick Henry here too. That here's Derrick Henry was doing what he always does at the beginning of the season, gets hurt. But if he comes back and is anywhere close to what Derrick Henry has and can be for the playoffs, he may be the running back we end up remembering during the course of this season. And the other one I think is A.J. Dillon. Aaron Jones, a fantastic player and all, but A.J. Dillon, all those games are going to go through Green Bay, and he's 250 pounds, and nobody wants to tackle him when it's 6 degrees outside, and all those things may come into play. So interesting that the Packers land 2 on that list. The wide receiver list is overwhelming to me because this group they're all very different in their own way, but also fantastic. When Tyreek Hill is number 5 on your list, you know what kind of list you've got here. Deebo Samuel, maybe the most diverse player that we see in the game right now. That his ability to line up in the backfield, and I swear he gains 10 yards every time they hand him the ball. Justin Jefferson, I think universally is looked at as one of those young players that is just going to be top of the charts in the National Football League for the entirety of his career if he can stay healthy. Cooper Kupp has shattered every conceivable notion of what his career could have been and just has owned it this year. And he's owned it because of the extra work that he puts in. He shows up at 6 o'clock in the morning with Matthew Stafford. They go over everything 1,000 times, and the magic shows up on the field. And Davante Adams and Aaron Rodgers, Davante's top of the list. How was the discussion on this one? Because if you said, all right, you get to pick one guy off of that list and you can take him, you can draft anybody you want, maybe it's Justin Jefferson just because of how young he is. But boy, that would be an interesting choice.
This was one of my favorite conversations that we had on the show for the award show, because, normally we'll get the finalists. We had 5 or 6 finalists for every single award. And before we announce the winner, we go, hey, who do you want to give a shout out to? Who do you want to talk about? And it was a good opportunity to talk about the guys on the list. And normally there was an obvious 2, maybe 3 guys that you really wanted to give shout outs to. Wide receiver, it's like, okay, you want to give a shout out to every single one of these guys. I mean, Jamar Chase isn't even on this list. That's how incredible wide receiver production has been this year. And we had a really fun debate on the show. Who would you rather take right now, Justin Jefferson or Jamar Chase? I'll let you guys know. I picked Justin Jefferson, but we had a really, really good back and forth with some great information about who would you take between Jefferson and Chase. But, you mentioned it. Davante Adams is at the top. I think if you're giving away one All-Pro honor, you would give it to him. But here we're given 3, so I think you would. I think that you would go Davante Adams, Cooper Kupp, and probably Justin Jefferson for the season that he's had. Cooper Kupp, though, I just want to shout out what he's been able to do. This is a little scouting note from me. He was used so heavily at Eastern Washington. He was the guy. And then when he got to the NFL, no matter what they continued to put on his plate, it never surprised him. He was always ready for it. He already had that in his DNA. So it wasn't new being a wide receiver 1. It wasn't new breaking all sorts of records, catching all these balls, getting all these yards. Go look at his stats from Eastern Washington. They're some of the best that you're ever going to see in college football. And so when he came into the NFL, having that in his DNA, that the more you leaned on him, the more comfortable he was going to return what you were giving him. I think that's a little thing in scouting that I always love to point back to. Has this guy been used heavily before? Can you count on him to be that again if he continues to ascend to be the talent that you believe that he is? Cooper Kupp's a great example of that.
Again, if you want to see all the details on this show that they put together, PFF YouTube, and you will thoroughly enjoy it, I promise you. The tight end position got really interesting as well. So Kyle Pitts, number 5 on the list. The great rookie in Atlanta, Rob Gronkowski, you can't kill him. Travis Kelce, right there as he always is. Literally feels like he won games by himself this year, at least some of the ones that I saw. But the 2 guys clearly at the top of the list here, Mark Andrews from the Ravens, who is fantastic. George Kittle, who is, again, one of those, not only the pass catcher, but the great run blocker as well. I bet that was a pretty healthy debate.
Yeah, and I think it was Austin Gale who said this on the show, that Mark Andrews has been quarterback proof, or somebody at the desk said that. And when you look at everything that's happened with the Ravens, how beat up they have been, Mark Andrews has been the steady Eddie, whether it was Tyler Huntley, whether it was Josh Johnson, whether it was Lamar Jackson, they leaned on Mark Andrews and he continued to deliver. And for you to have that kind of production, no matter who is your quarterback, first string, second string, third string, that's why you get that kind of a grade. That's why you're consistently so high in our rankings. And, of course, George Kittle's right there. He's an absolute alien, what he is able to do. Having him and Deebo Samuel on the same team almost doesn't even seem fair. It really doesn't. But, that's kind of what the 49ers have leaned on, and it's been great for him. But I just hats off to Mark Andrews in the year that he was able to have with so much inconsistency at the quarterback position.
Yeah, and it's really not a passing team. That's
right.
He's like the changeup, honestly. And you would think if any team was going to have a pure blocking tight end, it would be the Ravens, because that's, they're a run first sort of team, but they don't. And thank God they don't, because they've got a great one right there. The offensive line discussion on the show was so fantastic. I want to force people to go to the show because it's right off the top. Where we started with the quarterbacks, you guys started with the offensive line. And I mean, you may not know all the names, but it is such an inside look at football that I really want to push everybody to go watch that show. But the bottom line is there was really one guy who stuck out on the list, and that was Trent Williams. I mean, we have seen some unbelievable numbers. Like J.J. Watt back in the day when I first started with PFF literally broke our system because we were trying to do 1 to 100 system. So we had to the highest we could put JJ was 99.9. And a lot of the grade comes down to the separation between what he is and what the other people at that position are. And so that the gap was so large that if we put JJ Watt at 99, right? Like the Madden grade, we put him at 99. That meant the greatest players in the league, other than JJ Watt, the highest grade they could have was like an 88. I go, we can't give these all pro unbelievable players an 88. I go, how about if we give JJ Watt 108? And he goes, well, you can't do that. Then you're not a one. I mean, you should have heard some of the fights that we had over JJ Watt. And now Trent Williams, the outstanding tackle of the 49ers, is doing the same thing.
Yeah, just an unbelievable year from Trent Williams. And Sam Monson brings up a lot of great points on Trent Williams and how we got to the grade that we have here in 98.2, 98.3. And just depending on what you're looking at, Trent Williams is elite at all of it. Pass blocking, run blocking, it doesn't matter. He's an eraser. He was every single play. And that's what PFF, that's what we hang our hat on, right? We're looking at every single play. And for him to have a grade up in the 98s at all, really anything above like a 93, 94 is how it was explained to me. Anything for a season grade above 93, 94 is so difficult to get because you have to be that much better than the rest of your peers consistently, not just like a play, not just like, oh, okay, he erased that guy, he mauled that guy there. Oh, that was a great pass blocking rep. You are consistently unbelievably elite above your peers. And so we spent a lot of words talking about Trent Williams. He won a ton of awards for it, but I also wanted to give a shout out to DeAndre Whitworth, who we also gave an award to. We gave some recognition to him. The 40-year-old offensive tackle got an award last night as recognition for one of the best offensive linemen in the NFL. We had a really great discussion on Tyron Smith, Jordan Mailata, all of those guys. And so that was really cool. I'm with you. I would encourage everybody to go watch the beginning of the show. We start off talking about offensive linemen, and it's a really good conversation about why these guys have so much value, why we put so much emphasis on them, and ultimately why we wanted to recognize them getting some awards last night.
It is interesting that some of the teams that maybe don't have the top end quarterback play are getting away with it because they are stacked on this offensive line play. Basically Philadelphia and Cleveland and even the Rams with their ability to go some of those outside zones and bootlegs, the 49ers, a team that you mentioned, the Dallas Cowboys. So there are some teams now as we go into the playoffs that you're beginning to think, even the Green Bay Packers with the way that they can run it,
Right.
that the running game, despite the fact that we don't put a great deal of focus on the running back, our belief at PFF and what we believe the math will tell you is that it's more about the guys blocking than it is who's running the ball. And this is just a fantastic discussion all the way across the board. New England, another team that is doing that. I mean, even Kansas City, Creed Humphrey, the center, is number one on our list. And he's a guy in that remade Kansas City offensive line. Maybe it is the running game of Kansas City that ultimately puts them where they need to be here. Let's go on to defense now. And the biggest ho-hum of the entire thing is Aaron Donald at the top of the list. But a couple of guys to mention here. One, I think that Cameron Hayward, the year that he had this year, because they had so many injuries along that defensive line, and it just Tuitt was out, Alu was out, and he really sort of had to keep it together by himself. A great season. Jonathan Allen was tremendous this year. Some different guys. So Aaron Donald, again, top of that list. But the edge rushers, to me, it was something really interesting because it's so different. You've got TJ Watt, who tied Michael Strahan's sack record, right? He's right in there at number 3. Max Crosby, who really was number 1 for much of the year, one I think maybe led the league in pressures overall, had a great game basically to carry the Raiders into the playoffs in that game against the Chargers. Myles Garrett, Rashawn Gary, has come so far. Nick Bosa. But I want to hear, because I didn't hear this. I haven't gotten to the end of the show yet. Who did everybody pick out? I mean, how do you choose between TJ Watt, Max Crosby, and Myles Garrett as far as the top edge player?
Yeah, it's tough, right? I mean, like, this almost feels like wide receiver. You've got so many guys here. It's almost embarrassing keeping players off of this list, even outside of the 5. And I think a lot of the debate obviously surrounded 3 players: Myles Garrett, Max Crosby, and TJ Watt. And it was kind of a, who do you give this award to? Obviously, TJ Watt had the sacks. Myles Garrett has the higher overall PFF grade, which, as we've explained before, is play-by-play basis. And then Max Crosby, he just started the year so hot, continued to be hot as we went on. And like you said, he led the league in pressures. And so this was tough. Our defensive player of the year ended up going to Aaron Donald. So we didn't pick one of these guys here. But there was a ton of debate around who we would have picked for the edge rusher. And I think most of us on the desk would have selected either Myles Garrett or Max Crosby. I think a lot of, if we had to vote for one guy, if it was like a one all pro kind of a thing, given him the award, I think a lot of people would have recognized Max Crosby for not just leading the NFL in pressures, but like Aaron Donald was second in pressures. And I think Aaron Donald had 95, 96, something like that. And Max Crosby had 112. Like, he was the only guy who had over 100 pressures. He beat Aaron Donald by almost 15 pressures, right? Like, he had so much production, and it wasn't just in spurts. It was all year long. The Raiders are a team that they don't need a blitz to get all sorts of production. They rely heavily on their front four, and their front four delivered all season long. And so, for defensive player of the year and for best pass rusher, we ended up giving it to Aaron Donald just because how he gets his pressures as an interior defensive lineman. I mean, you're not even supposed to be able to do the things that he does. So we gave him the award because it's kind of just almost an Aaron Donald award at this point. But for edge rusher, we had a really great debate of where we would put TJ Watt and his 22.5 sack season up against guys like Myles Garrett, guys like Max Crosby. If we were voting for one edge rusher, I think as the group, I don't want to speak for everybody, but I think as the group, we probably would have landed on Max Crosby. But it was a really great debate with a lot of good information, talking about some damn good edge rushers.
No, Max Crosby, pretty amazing with just the effort alone. And just talk a little bit more about Aaron Donald, because it's going to frustrate people, and I understand that. That you've got somebody in Pittsburgh, because I love Pittsburgh. You know that. I love Pittsburgh. But to have somebody in Pittsburgh that has tied the sack record, the sort of iconic record, 22.5. And actually, there was a debate as to whether or not he deserved 23.5 because there was a fumbled snap and it was TJ Watt. The quarterback picks it up. TJ Watt's the
Right.
one who made the tackle. The whole thing. Pittsburgh appealed that to the league, claiming that should have been a sack as well. It was denied. But when we talk about Aaron Donald, I think the one thing that you have to consistently say is that sometimes it's easy to pick out who the best players are because they're getting double teamed on every single play. And certainly the guys we've been talking about. But Aaron Donald's ability to win against double teams and win inside where they could triple team them if they want to, and they often do, has just been an amazing run of consistency. We sort of had the JJ Watt era of you can't beat that. And now we're in that
Right.
Aaron Donald era of you can't beat him.
Yeah, and it feels that way, right? I mean, and when you go back to TJ Watt, we had a really good debate. And again, I encourage you guys to go watch the show because Steve and Sam and Austin even say kind of more words and more context on this that makes it great. But Austin's point that he hammered home with TJ Watt is we don't hate TJ Watt. TJ Watt had a fantastic year. He had a near elite grade from us, right? We recognize how impactful he has been as a pass rusher, but as a run defender, he's been marginal. I mean, we had him as a low 70s kind of a grade there. So, it's not like he was a major, massive impact as a run defender. Again, not that he was bad. It's just different. When you're comparing to somebody to Aaron Donald, it's really, really difficult. And with TJ Watt, yes, you have the 22 and a half sacks, but TJ Watt played like 450 snaps. Okay, well, what happened in the other 430, right? Outside of the 22 that he got getting sacks. Okay, what happens in the other ones? Now, am I saying he's a bad football player in that many snaps? No, that's not what I'm saying. But when you look at Aaron Donald and when you look at recognizing who is defensive player of the year, who is the pass rusher of the year, you just mentioned it, Chris. This man ain't flying under the radar for anybody. We have given Aaron Donald an elite PFF grade in every single year of his career since 2014. The league has been on Aaron Donald watch since 2016. Like since 2 years into the league, they've gone, okay, this guy's really, really freaking good. We better put every body we possibly can to block him. And he still gets production. He still gets through to the quarterback. And when you play on the interior, it's also much more natural that you're having to go through multiple bodies. When you're on the edge, yeah, you're a little bit of a further distance away from the quarterback, but you get a lot of one-on-ones. It's normally just, hey, I've got my offensive tackle. If I beat him in space, I'm going to have a clear-cut path to the quarterback. Aaron Donald's going up against one offensive guard and one offensive center on every single play, if not the running back also keying in on him. And yet he continues to get production. He continues to get pressures. He is far and away the best defensive player on the planet. And that is why we give him this award. That's why we recognize him with the way that we do. He plays such a unique alignment in where they place him and what he has to go through to have success. And yet he continues to do so every time. And so that's what PFF is all about. Not just looking at the 22 sacks, those 22 and a half plays. We recognize them. We give them props. TJ Watt, obviously, anytime you tie a record that's been standing for that long, that's that incredible, we give you your props. But every single play matters to us. And for that, Aaron Donald was the best football player.
And again, you can go to PFF's YouTube channel and watch the entire show, and I highly recommend you do. I want to hit on just a couple more people here, and one is Micah Parsons. We've seen a lot of rookies come in the league before. We've seen a lot of rookies that are good pass rushers or good cornerbacks or good whatever. Micah Parsons is playing almost every position there is for the Dallas Cowboys because he is expected to drop into coverage down the middle of the field, 25 yards deep sometimes. He's expected to get on the edge and go get the quarterback sometimes. He's expected to play middle linebacker and go sideline to sideline and take on guards and come up. And he has just answered the bell on every single one of them. And I give Mike Renner credit for him. I mean, Mike Renner was all over this guy from the beginning that this was going to be, and he's our draft guru. He was going to be such a difference maker, and he absolutely has been turning that Dallas Cowboys defense around. What were some of the comments about Micah Parsons?
Oh, it was a lot of remembering how freakish this dude's rookie year was, right? I mean, I give Dan Quinn a ton of credit for what he has been able to do on that defense, mainly his use of Micah Parsons and how creative he has been in getting the most out of Micah Parsons this season. Gives me a lot of encouragement that this dude is going to be a head coach again someday because he just gets it. He understands it. He didn't look at Micah Parsons and say, okay, we've got Jalen Smith, we've got Leighton Vander Esch, we've got experience at linebacker. So, I'm not really going to play Micah Parsons. I'm going to let him learn his rookie year. No. Micah Parsons showed up in practice, showed that he was one of the best players on the field. And Dan Quinn went, okay, I'm going to figure out how to get you on the field. And sometimes that was as an off-ball linebacker. Other times when they suffered a lot of injuries on the edge, they had him as a full-time edge rusher. And the thing that's the most impressive about Micah Parsons is that it's not like he went into games saying, okay, I am an edge rusher this game, or I am an off-ball linebacker. It's not even the game-by-game versatility that he had. There were games where he'd play 40 snaps on the edge, 10 snaps as an off-ball linebacker, 10 snaps on the edge, 40 snaps as an off-ball linebacker. Every single game, it was different. Dan Quinn put so much on this kid's plate, and he delivered. He is one of the most talented box players in the NFL, no doubt about it. And honestly, rookies aren't supposed to be able to do this. And so, you mentioned Mike recognizing that throughout the draft process. And that's what scouting's all about. It's all about looking at what guys can do and giving them the platform, the freedom, the structure to be able to do that. Go draft good football players and let them make good football plays. That's what Dan Quinn and the Dallas Cowboys have done all season long with Micah Parsons, and he has continued to reward them to the point where he is now a major focal point, even as a young rookie, for them being as high of a playoff seed as they are now.
My final one also has to do with the Dallas Cowboys. Trevon Diggs, who has become a bit of a hot button issue. He's 11 interceptions on the year, I think was the final number. Jalen Ramsey, we have as the number one player, and I agree with that. I think Jalen Ramsey's just been unbelievable this year. Some AJ Terrell, I know, had a great year. JC Jackson, it seems like every single year getting a lot of the interceptions. But why no Trevon Diggs? People want to put him in the category of defensive player of the year, and he didn't crack the top 5 on our cornerback list.
Yeah, and he wasn't in our finalist list for best pass coverage player either. We had 3 safeties and 3 corners. We had Jordan Poyer, Jalen Ramsey, Kevin Byard, AJ Terrell, Antoine Winfield Jr., and Darius Slay. Those were our 6 candidates for best coverage player. And I think the reason why Trevon Diggs isn't on that list is because that word coverage comes into it. It's not just takeaways. Now, do takeaways matter a whole damn lot? Of course they do. You'll hear coaches week in and week out say what? We got to win the turnover battle. We got to take the ball from them, and we got to keep the ball ourselves. And no corner in the NFL has done a better job of swinging possessions the way that Trevon Diggs has. And that is absolutely noteworthy. But he's also given up more than 1,000 yards in coverage this year. And so teams are not treating Trevon Diggs the way that they treated Stephon Gilmore, who won Defensive Player of the Year, or Jalen Ramsey, who has been regarded as one of the best corners in the NFL. You mentioned it there. They're not treating him as like one of these shutdown kind of corners. Trevon Diggs is making a lot of teams pay with interceptions, and yet every team continued to attack Diggs in coverage. Now, you just have to, we're not saying that Diggs is absolutely terrible, right? That's not what any of us are saying, but we're saying, look at the reason why that's the case. Look at the reason why teams aren't totally staying away from Diggs, despite him having 11 interceptions. It's because the overall coverage, that play-by-play basis that we are grading, does not paint Trevon Diggs in a light that you would think of with a player who is making that many impacts off of turnovers. And so really it's that snap by snap coverage grade. That's the reason why Trevon is not in this category. That's why his grade isn't very high for us, because he does have the 11 interceptions, but he's also given up more than 1,000 yards in coverage, which is one of the most, it might be the most in the NFL. I can't remember if he was at the top of the list or if he finished right there close to it, but that's ultimately why you got to take the good with the bad, and the good with the bad of Trevon Diggs still does not spell out one of the best coverage years here on our grades.
All right. Well, once again, the PFF YouTube channel, if you want to see the entire show, it is well worth your while. Michael Ayers, our producer here today, want to send a shout out for some of the stuff that he sent me about these games this weekend. One of the ones that I find really interesting are the numbers. Like Tom Brady is 34-11 in the playoffs. That is almost impossible to do. I mean, one of the things I'm proud of is that I actually have a winning record in my career. We were 5-4 when I was playing because we did have 2 Super Bowl losses, but at least we won a few to get there. But Tom Brady, 34-11. By comparison, some of these other great quarterbacks, Aaron Rodgers is 11-9. Ben Roethlisberger with 2 Super Bowl wins was 13-9. The other one that jumps out at you there on the list is Patrick Mahomes, 6-2. And it's probably the reason that most people have this thing coming down to 3 teams. They like Kansas City, they like Tampa, and they like Green Bay. Any gut feel on opening weekend, the one that sticks out to you?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'd have the most faith in the Packers right now, simply because, of course, they have the bye. You mentioned it there. Even if you are one of the best teams, even if you have one of the best quarterbacks, the playoffs is the playoffs. And if you've got to go line up against somebody, there's a chance that you could lose. So the fact that Green Bay isn't having to play this weekend, I mean, that kind of makes all the difference in the world right there. Why I think I would probably have the Packers as the favorite. The Bucs are getting healthy. They're getting a lot of guys back, but no Antonio Brown, no Chris Godwin. I still think that's really going to hurt him. People do, I think, forget what kind of an impact Antonio Brown even made in the Super Bowl last year. And yeah, of course, his antics are why he's not on the team now. But the Bucs are in the conversation, but it's tough without those 2 receivers, even with Tom Brady there. Patrick Mahomes, it's kind of like what Chiefs team is going to show up. They played really, really terribly at the beginning of the year on offense, and then they started to really get it together. And I think about a 7-game win streak right in the middle of the season there. And even amidst the 7-game win streak, it's not like you thought, okay, the Chiefs are back. It was almost like you were still waiting for something. And so with Patrick Mahomes, anything can happen, but I'd probably put it right now. I'd say I'd have the Packers as the favorites, the Bucs number 2. I'd say the Chiefs would probably be number 3. And then I'd have the Bills at number 4. I think the Bills are poised to catch fire. I think that they got pissed off with a couple of those losses near the end of the season. I think Josh Allen's playing really, really, really well. And so if they can find that good pass run split going into the playoffs, Buffalo could be a very dangerous team.
They got to win the rubber match against the Patriots this weekend. The other one I think is so intriguing is 49ers and Cowboys. The Cowboys are sitting on, they've got a lot of really good things going. I mean, they can throw the ball when they're right. They can run the ball when they're right. They have really good pass rushers, and DeMarcus Lawrence is back now, Randy Gregory. I mean, they have the ability, Micah Parsons, to get after the quarterback. But the 49ers are that pain in the rear team that you have to beat. I mean, they're going to line up and try and just blow you off the ball, and Trent Williams, and here it comes, and play action off of it. I would think that was not first choice for the Dallas Cowboys to see the 49ers come rolling in on this opening weekend, despite the fact they don't have a great record. There's something about that matchup, and I think the point spread reflects that the Cowboys only a 3-point favorite in that one.
Man, I think that when you look at everybody in the NFC who is playing this weekend, I think that, of course, nobody wants to face Tom Brady in the playoffs. But after the Buccaneers, let's just take home field advantage out of it. What's the one team that most fans would say they don't want to face? It's the Niners. And it's because they present such a unique matchup with Deebo Samuel, with George Kittle, with how they run the ball, with that offensive line led by Trent Williams, right? I mean, they just put you in such tough situations. They have Nick Bosa as well. They've got Fred Warner, still 2 fantastic young players in the game. And it's such a tough matchup because there are so many games throughout this season where you go, yeah, the 49ers, they're bad. They don't stand a chance here, and they win. And there's, it's just, there's so many instances where they give teams fits. There's such a tough matchup. Everybody talks about we ran into this team at the wrong time, or, it just wasn't a good matchup on paper. That's the Niners. That's everybody's fear of facing the 49ers because of those unique weapons they have. You can't just say to yourself, okay, we've got a good corner. He can guard Deebo Samuel. Okay, well, what happens when Deebo Samuel's lining up in the backfield at a halfback position, right? Who's guarding him then? One of your linebackers? Are you prepared for that? Same thing with George Kittle. Okay, he's on the line. We got a linebacker for that. All right, well, now he's out wide by the sideline. You have a corner for that? It's just so difficult to match up against the 49ers with those kinds of weapons. And anytime that's the case, you're a dangerous football team.
Trevor Sikkema, and the show this weekend is the All-Pro team, PFF's All-Pro team, and I hope you'll go check it out. It is on YouTube, PFF's YouTube channel, and you will really enjoy it. Hope you enjoy all the games this weekend. The 2 games on NBC, the Raiders and the Bengals, jump off on Saturday to kick everything off there, and then we'll do the Steelers and the Chiefs on Sunday night. But if you're a fan, this is the first time that we've had a Monday night game during the wild card weekend. First time we've had 6 games during the wild card weekend. So can't wait to get back here on Tuesday, and we'll all be brain dead, I'm sure, but we'll have a lot of fun with that. But Trevor, great job on the show, and look forward to doing this again sometime.
Appreciate it, Chris. Anytime.